World War I, often called the Great War, was a global conflict that lasted from July 28, 1914, to November 11, 1918. It involved the Central Powers, primarily Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria, against the Allied Powers, primarily France, the British Empire, Russia, Italy, Japan, and the United States. It was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, with an estimated 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians killed as a direct result of the war, while millions more died from war-related famine, disease, and the subsequent 1918 influenza pandemic. The scale of World War I was unprecedented due to the advanced industrialization and intricate global alliances that had developed in the decades leading up to the war. New military technologies, such as machine guns, poison gas, tanks, and aircraft, led to horrific levels of casualties and fundamentally changed the nature of warfare. The war also led to significant political and social upheaval, including the collapse of empires, the rise of new nations, and profound shifts in social structures. Causes of World War I. The outbreak of World War I was the culmination of a complex interplay of long-term and short-term factors that had been brewing in Europe for decades. Long-term causes. Nationalism. A fervent sense of national pride and identity was prevalent across Europe. This nationalism often manifested as a belief in the superiority of one's own nation and a desire for territorial expansion and dominance. In the Balkans, various ethnic groups, particularly the Slavs, harbored strong nationalist aspirations for independence from empires like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. Serbian nationalism, aiming to unite all South Slavs, was a particularly destabilizing force in the region. Imperialism. The major European powers were engaged in intense competition for colonies and economic influence around the globe. This imperial rivalry, particularly in Africa and Asia, created friction and mistrust among nations. Germany's late entry into the scramble for colonies led to resentment and a desire to challenge the existing dominance of powers like Britain and France. Militarism. An arms race and a glorification of military power were significant features of the pre-war era. Nations believed that military strength was essential for national security and prestige. This led to a build-up of large armies and navies, the development of new weapons technologies, and the creation of detailed mobilization plans. The intense Anglo-German naval rivalry was a particularly prominent aspect of this militarism. The alliance system. A complex network of treaties and alliances had developed among European powers. These alliances, initially intended to maintain peace by creating a balance of power, ultimately escalated the conflict. The two primary alliance blocs were the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, though Italy later remained neutral and eventually joined the Allied powers. The Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Great Britain. These alliances meant that a conflict between two nations could quickly draw in their allies, leading to a wider war. Economic competition. Industrial growth and economic rivalry also played a role in increasing tensions. Competition for markets, resources, and trade routes fueled animosity between nations, particularly between industrial powerhouses like Germany and Great Britain. Short-term causes. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The immediate trigger for World War I was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, Bosnia. The assassin was Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb nationalist and a member of the Black Hand, a secret society aiming to unite all South Slavs. The July Crisis. The assassination led to a diplomatic crisis known as the July Crisis. Austria-Hungary, with the backing of Germany, issued an ultimatum to Serbia with demands so stringent that Serbia could only partially accept them. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914, after Serbia's response was deemed insufficient. Mobilization and declarations of war. The alliance system then kicked into gear. Russia, bound by treaty to Serbia, began to mobilize its army in support. Germany, seeing Russia's mobilization as a threat, demanded Russia halt its mobilization and declared war on Russia on August 1, 1914. France, allied with Russia, also began to mobilize, and Germany declared war on France on August 3, 1914. Germany's invasion of neutral Belgium to reach France led Great Britain, which had a treaty to protect Belgium's neutrality, to declare war on Germany on August 4, 1914. Key events and phases of World War I. World War I unfolded in several key phases across multiple fronts. 1914. The initial onslaught and stalemate. The Western Front. Germany launched the Schlieffen Plan, aiming for a swift defeat of France by invading through neutral Belgium. However, the German advance was halted by French and British forces at the First Battle of the Marne in September 1914. This failure led to the development of trench warfare, a brutal and static form of combat that would characterize the Western Front for the next 3 years. Trenches stretched for hundreds of miles, from the English Channel to the Swiss border, and were defended by barbed wire, machine guns, and artillery. The Eastern Front. The Eastern Front saw more fluid movement but was equally devastating. Russia initially mobilized quickly and launched offensives into East Prussia, but suffered significant defeats at the battles of Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes in August and September 1914. Austria-Hungary also faced setbacks against Russia and Serbia. Other theaters. Fighting also occurred in Serbia, where Austria-Hungary's initial attempts to subdue the Serbs were unsuccessful, and in the Ottoman Empire, which joined the Central Powers in October 1914. 1915–1917, years of attrition. The Western Front. This period was marked by massive and costly offensives on the Western Front aimed at breaking the stalemate, but resulting in horrific casualties with little territorial gain. Key battles included the Second Battle of Ypres, April–May 1915, the first large-scale use of poison gas by Germany. The Battle of Verdun, February–December 1916, a prolonged and exceptionally bloody battle fought to bleed France white, resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties on both sides. The Battle of the Somme, July–November 1916, a joint British and French offensive that also resulted in enormous losses, including nearly 60,000 British casualties on the first day alone. The Battle of Passchendaele, Third Battle of Ypres, July–November 1917, fought in terrible muddy conditions, resulting in massive casualties for minimal gains. The Eastern Front. Russia suffered heavy losses and internal unrest. Germany and Austria-Hungary made significant advances. By 1917, the strain of the war contributed to the February and October revolutions in Russia, leading to the collapse of the Tsarist regime and the eventual withdrawal of Russia from the war under the Bolshevik government. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March 1918 formally ended Russia's involvement, ceding large territories to Germany. The Gallipoli Campaign, February 1915 to January 1916, an Allied attempt to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war by securing the Dardanelles Strait. The campaign was a disastrous failure, resulting in heavy casualties for the British Empire, including Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, Anzac, France, and the Ottoman Empire. Italy enters the war, May 1915, Italy, initially neutral, joined the Allied powers in exchange for promises of territorial gains from Austria-Hungary. The Italian front became another theater of bloody and largely static trench warfare in the Alps. Naval warfare. Naval battles, such as the Battle of Jutland, May–June 1916, the only large-scale fleet engagement between the British and German navies, were inconclusive. However, Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare, targeting Allied merchant ships and even neutral vessels like the RMS Lusitania, sunk in 1915 with American casualties, eventually drew the United States into the war. 1917–1918, the decisive phase and the end of the war. The United States enters the war, April 1917, the United States declared war on Germany due to several factors, including unrestricted submarine warfare, the Zimmermann Telegram, a German proposal to Mexico to form an alliance against the U.S., and the desire to protect democratic ideals. The entry of the U.S. provided the Allies with fresh troops, resources, and economic power, shifting the balance of the war. The German Spring Offensive, March–July 1918, with Russia out of the war, Germany launched a series of major offensives on the Western Front to try to achieve a decisive victory before the full impact of U.S. entry was felt. These offensives initially made significant gains but ultimately failed due to Allied resistance, particularly with the increasing numbers of American troops, and German exhaustion. The Allied counteroffensives, August–November 1918, the Allies, now reinforced by American forces, launched a series of successful counteroffensives, known as the 100 Days Offensive, which pushed the German army back. The Central Powers began to collapse. Bulgaria signed an armistice in September, the Ottoman Empire in October, and Austria-Hungary in early November. The armistice, November 11, 1918, facing internal revolution and the overwhelming Allied advance, Germany agreed to an armistice, which took effect at 11 a.m. on November 11, 1918, ending the fighting. Impact and aftermath of World War I. World War I had a profound and lasting impact on the world. Political consequences. Asterisk collapse of empires. The war led to the disintegration of four major European empires: the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire. New nations were formed from their remnants, often based on the principle of self-determination, though this process was not always smooth and led to new ethnic tensions. Asterisk rise of new ideologies. The war created conditions for the rise of new political ideologies. The Russian Revolution led to the establishment of the first communist state. The disillusionment and economic hardship following the war contributed to the rise of fascism in Italy and later Nazism in Germany. Asterisk the League of Nations. To prevent future wars, the League of Nations was established as an international organization aimed at promoting peace and cooperation. However, it proved to be largely ineffective due to its lack of enforcement powers and the absence of key nations like the United States. Asterisk redrawing the map of Europe and the Middle East. The Treaty of Versailles and other post-war treaties significantly altered the political map of Europe. New nations like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia were created. In the Middle East, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire led to the division of its territories into mandates under British and French control, sowing the seeds for future conflicts in the region. Social consequences. Asterisk mass casualties and demographic shifts. The war resulted in an unprecedented loss of life, with millions killed and many more wounded or disabled. This had a significant impact on the demographics of the participating nations, leading to labor shortages and a generation of men scarred by their experiences. Asterisk changes in gender roles. With men away fighting, women took on many roles previously held by men in the workforce and society. This contributed to the women's suffrage movement and broader changes in gender roles in the post-war era. Asterisk social trauma and disillusionment. The brutal and prolonged nature of the war led to widespread social trauma, disillusionment with pre-war values and institutions, and a sense of loss and grief that permeated society. The lost generation of young men who survived the war often struggled to reintegrate into civilian life. Economic consequences. Asterisk widespread destruction and debt. The war caused immense physical destruction, particularly in France and Belgium. Participating nations incurred massive debts to finance the war effort, leading to economic instability and inflation in the post-war period. Asterisk rise of the United States as an economic power. The war shifted the global economic balance, with the United States emerging as a major economic power and creditor, having largely avoided the physical devastation and heavy financial burdens experienced by European nations. Asterisk reparations and economic hardship in Germany. The Treaty of Versailles imposed heavy reparations on Germany, contributing to economic hardship, resentment, and political instability in the country, factors that played a role in the rise of Nazism. Technological and military consequences. Asterisk advancement of military technology. World War I spurred rapid advancements in military technology, including machine guns, artillery, tanks, aircraft, submarines, and chemical weapons. These innovations fundamentally changed the nature of warfare and had a lasting impact on military doctrine. Asterisk total war. The war marked a shift towards total war, where entire societies and economies were mobilized for the war effort, blurring the lines between combatants and civilians. World War I was a watershed moment in history. Its devastating consequences reshaped the political landscape, transformed societies, and sowed the seeds for future conflicts, most notably World War II. The lessons learned, and not learned, from the Great War continue to influence international relations and the understanding of conflict to this day. The scale of the destruction and loss of life served as a stark reminder of the horrific potential of industrialized warfare and the critical importance of international cooperation to prevent such tragedies from recurring.